What's a COO at early stage? Just one minus the CEO. What's biz ops? Whatever's broken or needs to get built. What's chief of staff? The glue. Strategic CFOs, they're not just finance. 10% of my calendar as a CFO was finance. So you see the pattern. General manager, just whatever needs to get done. Do I need to sell? Do I need to sit in a product meeting? And the bigger you get, the more specialized you get. But at early stage, a lot of generalism. We are not defined by titles. We are multidisciplinary, and we are elite specialists at being generalists.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where one powerful conversation here can do what 17 meetings, 3 memos, and a whiteboard brainstorm couldn't. And that is actually move the needle. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. How do you stay focused on growth when everything around you feels like it's falling apart? Anybody ever felt that? Just me? No, you too? Well, in this episode, we explore the mindset and habits that turn obstacles into opportunities, not through luck, but through intentional resilience, clear goals, and openness to change. This is the story of someone who didn't just navigate challenges, but used them as stepping stones to personal and professional transformation. We'll dive into the power of mentorship, how the right people at the right time can alter your trajectory, and why building a strong support system is just as important as any skill set. You'll hear how embracing change rather than resisting it often opens doors to breakthroughs that staying comfortable just never could. From reframing failure to setting meaningful, actionable goals, this episode is packed with real world wisdom for anyone chasing growth, whether you're scaling a business, shifting careers, or just trying to level up your mindset. If you're looking for motivation that's grounded in experience and ready to take your next step with more intention, this one is for you. Let's get into it. Our founder on Tuesday was Vitaly Motus, who built reviews on my website to help businesses turn great service into 5-star visibility. Anybody find it challenging to get people to leave reviews? Yeah, it's one of those things that's tough, but he's cracked the code here. He showed us how simplicity, automation, and real customer feedback can drive reputation and how that can lead to revenue. Our expert guest last week was Nahed Kairala, who unpacked how to use HR as rocket fuel for global growth. From cultural alignment to scalable systems, Nahed laid out the leadership lessons behind taking companies from 7 to 9 figures super fast. If you missed either of those episodes, you've got to check them out. There's absolute gold in both of them. My guest today is Casey Wu, 6-time CFO, 2-time COO, and one of the world's most trusted minds in startup operations. With over 2 decades of experience scaling businesses across software, hardware, marketplaces, and e-commerce, Casey has guided companies from early-stage chaos to pre-IPO precision and everything in between. He's led high-growth organizations through strategic exits, streamlined operations at scale, and built frameworks that align vision with execution. Beyond his executive roles, Casey's also the co-founder and CEO of the Operators Guild, a community of over 1,000 top-tier execs who trade insights, share playbooks, and support each other through the hard stuff. Welcome someone who's not just scaled companies, but helped shape the operators behind them. Casey Wu. Hey, Casey, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Glad to be here.
You've been a CFO, COO, investor, and run a big community for tech operators. What has kept you in the trenches of startup scaling all these years?
The short answer is I discovered what drives me, what keeps me most excited, and that's building. And I think for a long time, I was in the classic kind of academic tracks. What I mean by that is You go to a good school and they say, hey, there's a few choices for you that are prestigious and respected. It's like doctor, lawyer, engineer, management consulting, Wall Street, and a couple others. And I went to Wall Street and felt like I fit until the fulfillment just kind of wasn't there after a while. Stumbled upon early entrepreneurship, tech companies, and then the minute I made that first pivotal jump, I never looked back.
Yeah, so you're really finding your fit.
There's a dopamine hit in what we do.
Yes.
And I just happen to need it more than others.
It's an amazing thing. Well, one of the things that you've done is you've really kind of defined a new professional role, the scaler. Tell me what a scaler is and how does this role become essential in early stage companies?
Yeah. So what I realized is when I first left Wall Street and I came over to do early stage tech, it was very lonely. But even more so is misunderstood what I could do. The question was, do you code or do you sell? And if you can't do those, you're kind of considered back office, not a force multiplier. This was about 15 years ago.
Sure.
So it hit me that, wow, not only it's hard to get a job, I don't think the job they think I can do is even worth much. And that led me to start a small 9-person group called the Operators Guild. It was just like a breakfast club. And that is 100x'd organically over 10 years into 1,200, almost 1,200 across 20 chapters. And that led me to interview over 1,200, coincidentally, similar number, individuals who, through word of mouth, would apply. They're CFOs, COOs, director, VP, biz ops, strategy, chief of staff, early founders, general managers. So notice we all got along. The group was fit for them, but our titles were everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, if you heard those titles, we don't code or we don't sell. Or specifically, that's not our primary job, like an engineer, salesperson, marketer. So what I learned over time as I spoke to so many and was one, and then after 6 or 7, what I call tours of duty at different startups, in pretty much all those titles, is that the titles are misleading.
Yeah.
I'm a 5-time CFO, but I'm not a CFO. I'm not a finance guy. I've done biz ops. I've done chief of staff. I've been a janitor. I've done founder. So what am I? By the way, many people in our group have messed up LinkedIns. They're all over the place. There's no pattern. But then I've discovered what the pattern was. The pattern is that we scale. The pattern is that we are horizontal orthogonal scalers. We get dropped in and, the classic, we get it done. What needs fixing? So we're like 1 minus whatever is working or exists. What's a COO at early stage? Just 1 minus the CEO. What's biz ops? Whatever's broken or needs to get built. What's chief of staff? The glue. CFOs, strategic CFOs, they're not just finance. 10% of my calendar as a CFO was finance. So you see the pattern. General manager, just whatever needs to get done. Do I need to sell? Do I need to sit in a product meeting? And the bigger you get, the more specialized you get. But at early stage, a lot of generalism. Anyhow, I call that a scaler. We are not defined by titles. We are multidisciplinary, and we are elite specialists at being generalists.
I love that. And as companies scale, things do change. So why do so many specialists struggle in startups? They've been in a big company, specialized, and they go to a startup and they're expected to be generalists. And so they may struggle there, while generalists or scalers, now I like your term, they'll thrive in those high pressure environments.
Yeah, generally speaking, the earlier you go, the more change there is, per day. Think of a 3-year-old, a week in the life of a 3-year-old versus a week in the life of a 50-year-old. The 3-year-old is going to have much more change going on than a 50. So it's a very similar, what I call business physics. So that's one dynamic. The second dynamic is when you are small, you don't have a lot of people, but you might have the same amount of stuff a business needs to do, like sales, marketing. So what does that mean? That means for every person you have, they have to do more different things. Think about a founder. They're one person, but they got to do the accounting, the office lease, everything. So by definition, they are multi-disciplined, or they have to be. Multiple hats is what we call it, right?
Yes.
So specialists, if you think about it, which are really good and comfortable at one thing very deep and well, I don't know, I'm going to call it a accounting specialist or legal specialist, is not going to feel as comfortable when they're told to do 7 different things that are, not homogenous. Hey, figure out the website. Then let's figure out our cash flow. Then we got to find an office lease. Oh, and then we got to build a deck to fundraise. Now, over time, you start to hire specialists, right? When you get big enough, you hire a head of sales. When you get big enough, you hire a head of accounting. And then all of a sudden, the mix between generalists and specialists shift towards specialists. IBM probably has 200 people that just do payroll. That's all they do. Right. They focus just on global payroll. Well, payroll is just 1/100th of the things a founder has to do. So there you go. So scalers are generally, they love diversity, love context switching. They'd rather be horizontal than vertical. And then the opposite would be, those who like to go deep and be more specialized.
Makes sense. Do you think AI is changing that? Pushing, more toward, generalist versus specialist? I mean, do you think it's like, is it reshaping those roles and creating more scalers and more of that horizontal role?
100%. The world for a very long time was built for specialists. So think like, the cobbler, the blacksmith, right? Because like, what in the village are you doing? I'm the doctor. I'm the milkman, whatever. And specialty has always been very easy to understand and appreciate. I'm a writer. I'm the accountant. Yeah. Because humans like that categorization. It's just an easier way to understand people. But as we know, things are more complex than that. In the corporate world with AI, the easiest thing for a computer to take over is something that is repetitive or similar. So by definition, specialty, right? Cobbler versus blacksmith, let's do all the cobbler stuff first and then all the blacksmith stuff first. Now, as we're going to running the village, which is, it's kind of a specialty, but it requires a lot of different specialties or disciplines of understanding. That takes longer for a machine or intelligence to get around. So by definition, I think AI is going to be, I would say starting to be enabling and helping specialists more, but obviously the more junior a specialist, I think the more that job is replaced. And the more senior, by definition, becomes a little bit more horizontal, a little more strategic. The head of the cobbler, guild is probably doing more complicated, diverse things than the apprentice who just started. All right. So yes. So I think the world is moving toward people that run AI agents across different specialties, like a marketing AI agent and a finance AI agent. But a scaler is very well equipped to run those because they're very used to juggling horizontal.
That makes sense. You mentioned a number of different titles: BizOps, strategy, COO, chief of staff, RevOps. All of these being part of the scalar archetype. What is it that ties all those roles together? And how do companies make the most out of that without overlapping or confusion over who's doing what?
Part of, I do think, the titles do matter a little bit, right? BizOps and RevOps are different.
Yes.
The best analogy I could use, and this is part of the book that I'm starting to write, the working title is called The Scalar, The Rise of Special Forces in Business. So special forces in this case is a reference to the military, where you have Army, Navy, Air Force. Think of it like sales, engineering, legal. You have the specialists, the big specialist departments. And then about 100 years ago, special forces was formalized. That's Delta Force, Navy SEALs, commandos. And they are much smaller in team size, more mission oriented, deployment oriented, rather than, big campaigns.
Sure.
And if you just, let's just pick on Navy SEALs real quick. They have different specialties within SEALs. Now, SEALs to me are generalists, right? They need to eat, swim, run, kill, teach, right? Just by their training alone, you can see it's extremely a little bit of everything, shoot, etc. So common air quote disciplines within Navy SEALs are medic, sniper, leader, radio comms, and explosives. Okay. So same thing in a corporation. There is, biz ops might be more project management oriented, process and systems. Rev ops is more of a specialist in building infrastructure and intelligence for go-to-market. Then you have, let's say, chief of staff, right? Which is, also a very different type of, organizational structure in terms of maybe planning, driving goals, aligning with the CEO and all the other functions. So they're all slightly different disciplines, but they all share this cross-departmental, cross-functional core basis. So the way you organize it is, a RevOps person sits with sales all the time, right? Or chief of staff is tied to the COO or the CEO. The CFO obviously, specializes in the finance field, fundraising, deployment of capital. So that's how they get sorted. And that's another reason why, to your point, there's some adjacencies. So you see sometimes CFOs become COOs, right? You see sometimes BizOps becomes product. That's a different story. Chief of staffs become COOs. General managers come from being a CFO, right? So there's some movement within them as well across career path.
That makes sense. And you've had some of that movement as well, as CFO multiple times, COO. What's maybe one recurring pattern you've seen that consistently derails early stage operations?
Oh, you mean derailing a business or derailing a scaler in their career path?
We'll say derailing a business. We'll actually get to the scalar question next, because that's a good one too.
Wow. There's obviously many. One that comes to mind is raising too much or raising at too high of a valuation. So I think people who haven't gone through enough cycles of fundraising might think that more is more, bigger is better. The simple comment there is valuations aren't free. $1 billion valuation is more pricey to you, more costly to you than a 500 million valuation, because it's expectations built in.
Yes.
So be careful what you raise at. It might help your dilution because your price is higher, but that means you got to grow faster, your expectations are higher, and the room for error is less, right? So I think that's a really common and difficult one to align if you don't have, I think, someone that really understands that world, which in theory, strategic CFOs can help with a lot, as well as obviously experienced founders. Another one is probably not focusing, doing too much. I remember one company where there's literally 100 initiatives at our planning meeting, our offsite. And, the CEO goes, "We're doing too much." And everyone started clapping. And he crossed off 85 of them and goes, "We got not 100, but we got 15. And then I said, "That's still too much. I think it should be 5." Right? Now, obviously that's dependent on company, but I think
Sure.
It's very hard to be ruthless at what to focus on when you have highly creative, innovative, ambitious type personalities in a room who have a can-do, context switching attitude. Why can't we do 10 things? All of them are valuable, right? So I think another thing is just really placing value on each of them and realizing, wow, the 80-20 rule, sometimes the 95-5 rule exists very clearly in
Right.
Yeah. And there's more, but those are two that I see.
That's really good because when you do that and you cross those off, and you really have to get focused, and there's competition between projects, and you have to decide which one is really more important. It doesn't mean that you never do the other things that you cross off, but it's what do you do right now? What's most important? And really focusing on that, and then doing other things later on, or sometimes never. There's a lot of things I think we put on our list that don't belong there.
That's right.
Well, thinking about scalers and just kind of how they work, it seems like that they need structure, where startups kind of move fast, break things. It's disorganized, or maybe controlled chaos, semi-controlled chaos, maybe. What are maybe one or two battle-tested frameworks that you could use to create clarity inside of that chaos so that scalers thrive?
You mean in terms of how they run the business? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I think a lot of this will probably sound not very original, because I think it's called what I call brilliant basics, right? Which is, the first thing is, when you look at a business, you have to quickly identify the core dials and levers. What is it? So an example would be, if you look at Uber, what's core to Uber? Physical operations, right? It's very physical. There's a driver, there's a car. And then there's markets. It's very market based, right? So right there, the team, the KPIs around it, the roadmap should be a very market land expand type of business. The other part of Uber, if you look at it, is very heavy on data operations.
Yes.
When to add drivers, when not to pricing. Oh my God, it takes like a rocket scientist to figure out pricing, right? So it's like logistics, market land expand, physical marketplace, right? There's riders and there's drivers. It's a marketplace business. The other part that's very core to Uber is legal. A lot of lawsuits, a lot of, permitting, et cetera, at all the different markets. So once you understand the key drivers of that business and what its DNA should be, like where it should be leaning, translation, it's not fintech, right? That's a very different thing. It's not
Right.
E-commerce, right? Then you start to back into wiring it a certain way. So you have to wire it up and say, okay, what do we need to measure? What is the most, like the health metrics of a business like this? One is rider sign up, right? Rider engagement. Driver, same thing, driver satisfaction, driver engagement. There's a very heavy marketing element because it's consumer. So measuring marketing efficiency, right? So on and on and on. You just figure out what matters. And then from there, you start to monitor it. And then that is kind of like a guidepost, could be weekly, monthly, quarterly, where depending on your team, they monitor and make decisions off of the intelligence. What I see too often is people measuring things that are tertiary or secondary to the company. So let me think. Like WeWork is not really a tech business, right? So a lot of tech metrics are not going to be as valuable. It's a real estate business, right? So there's real estate metrics. So focus on, and literally, I think in terms of metrics, another pitfall is, you see 800 metrics when there should be like 10. Now from there,
That's true.
Red, yellow, green it, right? You can double click into certain things. So that I think is a good old fashioned way for scalers and anyone running a business to know where to prioritize, where to focus, what's working, what's not. And of course, forget just metrics. It's also talking to people, talking to customers, engaging with the team and asking questions like, how's it going? What's working, what's not? What's keeping you up at night? So finding extremes also when you talk is helpful. So all of this is pulse on the business.
Yeah.
And then from there you make decisions.
With that, you've seen inside dozens of growth stage companies. What are some of the biggest missteps you see founders make when trying to scale, specifically operational functions, either scale too early or too late?
You kind of said it. It's over hiring too early. It's very tricky because sometimes you have to arm up early because it's a land grab, and you can't do it late. But obviously, if it's a false green light and the business is not moving, despite you hiring all the salespeople and all the ops people to do it, then you just have a lot of burn, right? Then you have to have a layoff, et cetera.
Yeah.
I think in general, the faster you're moving, the earlier you need to upgrade infrastructure. And, it's a law of anything. If you move from mid-market to enterprise size business, your systems do too. And sometimes it could be, hey, we can just ride off of this old system, this plastic system, and not upgrade it to steel, in a software type of analogy, because it takes too much time or costs too much money. It will cost way more money and cost way more time to integrate when you're bigger. So it's easier to upgrade a accounting system when you have less transactions.
Sure.
So even though it might cost more and you don't need it now, you're moving so fast, in 7 months, you need it. So you have to be skating to the puck and watching where it's going and meeting it there, right? As compared to being behind it. And that's both in hiring, that's both in systems. But it's a constant battle between investing and upgrading and then leaning it out, right? So you kind of build up, improve stuff, digest it, and then lean it out. You have to make it more efficient. So that system should make you more efficient. So wait till it gets more efficient, right? If it's not, it's still kind of bloated. And also there's kind of a braking distance. So once again, depending how fast you go. In general, I think tech companies should be looking 2 years out. So where are we going to be 2 years out? Are we equipped for that? If we're not, we should start moving toward upgrading something or changing something so that we meet that need of the business 2 years out. WeWork was moving so fast, it was probably more like 1 year out. Right? So it just depends on how fast, what I call braking distance is. And the last thing I'll say, especially with AI, I've learned through 7 different startups, you'd be surprised how much you can do with very few people.
Yes.
And I wouldn't believe it until I've seen all the cycles. I've seen fully built out, luxurious amounts of resources all the way down to, oh my God, is one person doing 10 things or 10 jobs? And yeah, they do like 8 of them. It's pretty amazing.
Are you missing key relationships that could transform your leadership? Most leaders are. They just can't see it. And here's what shocked me. The most successful leaders aren't lone heroes. They're the center of 4 specific relationships that multiply their impact while preserving their sanity. You're probably like everybody else, drowning in connections, but starving for real support. And it's creating a silent epidemic of leadership burnout among executives just like you. So, take my free assessment at thecaptainskeys.com. Discover which critical relationships you're missing in under 5 minutes, and then grab my new book, The Captain's Keys, part Netflix drama, part game-changing blueprint for leadership that actually sustains you. One CEO called it the owner's manual I never got. So stop flying blind and see what you're missing.
With AI doing more of that, routine kind of work and even enhancing, the skills that we have, where one person is doing 8 different jobs, what do you think will make a generalist or a scaler indispensable in the next 3, 4, 5 years?
For sure, it's being very well versed in the AI tools that are available, in knowing how to stitch them together, a little bit of what they call vibe coding, right? Being familiar with how to code a bit, also prompt engineering. So that's kind of the new-ish tool kit. But yeah, I think that's the most obvious one that's happening right now. The rest is, I think, remains the same that it has been for 10, 20 years as the brilliant basics of business. But really, it's integrating AI into your workflow and when a human in the loop is needed versus, nope, you should just use a machine.
Yeah. How can scalers best integrate AI-generated insights into the strategic decision-making without really just over-relying on automation and letting the AI do it? What does that balance look like?
I think like anything, you still need to really understand how the business works and the pulse on the business. So the short answer is sanity checking. For example, if you saw a P&L and it says, because a machine does the P&L, let's call it, they spit out something for you.
Okay.
And it says, and you look at it and I go, hey, what do you think of the output of the machine or the A machine? It's like, oh, it looks good. Well, what do you mean it looks good? It all adds up. I'm like, oh, it adds up. But it says that we have 1 trillion of revenue. And yeah, it adds up.
That would be a great thing.
Yeah, it adds up. But
probably not right. Yeah.
Does that smell right to you? I mean, obviously I'm being extreme, but do you think we have 1 trillion with 4 customers? Right. So you got to check it. You got to look at it and say, does this make sense? Spot check it. They call it trust but verify. Double click into a few things, right? So I think as AI does a lot of the heavy lifting, you need to quality check it, right? Check every 10th chocolate bar that comes out of the factory. You know what I mean? Talk to the customer. So I think one thing is just general high level is a feeling, right? The other one, and I know this sounds biased, but is community. So everything is changing so fast. The best way to stay on top of everything is a community of like-minded operators who, so Operators Guild obviously does that. We have a forum called, AI tools, right? Or AI agents. And there's about 150 people who are in that forum sharing lessons and new AI agents and agents they've built. And so, like anything, to stay on top of it, you got to engage. You got to work with it every day. Talk to people. If you want to stay on top of cars, there's car clubs. When you go out to, the car show and talk to people, same thing. And then all of a sudden you just stay on top of stuff because you are in it. So that really is the answer to a lot of these things, especially fast moving, is wherever the top operators are using it that are similar to you, be in that forum, read what's going on, share, contribute, have a coffee, right? So it's classic learning, but it's just more nonlinear. And that works pretty well.
That's good. I think that's tremendous. Community is so important. I think it's becoming more important, especially as technology is changing so fast.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, a lot of operators don't stay around for too long in the same types of roles, and burnout is a real thing. I think the tenure, maybe 24, 36 months, something like that. How do founders build better environments so we're not burning out our number twos or the COOs and CFOs and our scalers? Because it's a really important role.
I think it goes back to ruthless prioritization. If you give someone 15 things to do, no, that's a lot. I mean, do they really need to do all 15? And will they do them well? It's better to focus and say, let's really dive into what matters and what, they call it strategic priorities, and say, oh, there's 3 things that matter. So clarity of priorities and what matters, what doesn't. So, and then eliminating saying no to a lot of things is a huge step. The other is communication, very clear communication. These are your priorities, do by when. If it starts to change or doesn't make sense, let me know. So checking in here and there. So I think more rapid touch points, more frequent touch points, and clear communication of expectations and deliverables for any job helps with burnout. But most importantly, doing less for a greater effect. And of course, giving them tools, right? Giving them resources, budget to have tools where it takes the weight off them and they can focus on the strategic part and not the mundane part.
I like that. Yeah, when they're really working on something they enjoy, that's strategic, that is fully engaging, I think that's a lot different than having 15 different tasks that, varying levels of engagement that are using different skills. So it can become really fun where it doesn't feel like work, even though the hours and the time commitment is still really high. We work closely with a lot of operators kind of across the ecosystem. What are some of the common blind spots that even experienced execs face in early stage scaling?
I think a lot of us, it's hard not to get peer pressured or what they call drink the Kool-Aid when things are going really well. When every signal is green, when you're getting preempted and getting all the money you want, and all of a sudden, people want more hires, more tools, more this. Let's go over here. Let's do that. Let's conquer that land.
Yeah.
It's very tempting and it's very alluring because part of it is, get aggressive. Look at Uber. They won because of aggressiveness, right? Depending on what. WeWork was the most aggressive. That's the biggest co-working. There were many other co-working. They didn't survive, right? So aggression and speed and growth. There is some truth in that in terms of winning, right? But it's really tricky because sometimes that's when you overextend yourself, right? Sometimes that's when you get yourself in some serious down rounds, which demoralize employees and cause a whole nother set of problems. But I think it's balancing momentum and growth and go for it and prudency. That's really hard, even for experienced people.
Yeah. If you're building a new ops team from scratch today, how would you balance experience, generalist, horsepower, and AI fluency?
I think AI fluency is now just kind of a core competency across all. I think if you're junior, you probably have to be more tactically AI fluent. If you're much more senior, you have to just be more generally versed. Nice to be tactically versed, but it's kind of like a 4-star general doesn't need to know how to clean a weapon as much as a specialist in the army.
Right.
So there's a little bit of that, but in general, they understand warfare, so that's important. Or AI. What I love to do is I strongly believe everyone has a spike. I remember hiring someone for marketing. And after about a month, for some reason, when we're coming up with marketing campaigns, she wasn't that excited about it. She wasn't delivering a lot of new stuff. I felt like I was pulling her along. But all of a sudden, I looked at her desk, and it was the most organized desk I've ever seen. Her pens, she had like 60 colored pens, all organized by color. And I was like, have you ever thought about marketing operations? And she's like, no. I was like, I have a feeling you would like that more than creating marketing campaigns. And sure enough, she just glowed. The minute we switched her into running 150 event operations per year, dialed the process, everything was on track, And so I find it very fulfilling to look at a person, see what they do, see where they lean, see where they're natural, and say, okay, you are very good at organizing, good with people, good with numbers. See what makes them feel alive. And then just put them in that spot. So find out what job requires those things that glow them up. I know an accountant who just loves organizing and getting it dialed to the penny, auditing, finding the bug, tracing everything. Well, then of course you love accounting. I know someone who loves building relationships. Why not business development?
Right.
Out there and just such a natural networker and relationship builder, and everyone likes him or her. They should probably be external facing, right? So, and then of course, what does the business need, right? You don't just hire anyone, right? The business needs, event operations because we do 150 events. Okay, is there someone that is interested in external facing organization?
Yeah,
that to me is how you build effective teams. And then the job and where that company is in that stage will dictate the level of experience, et cetera.
That makes sense. Well, someone is stepping into their first role, or maybe wants to get into that role. Maybe they're in a finance, analytics, legal role, something. They want to evolve into a scaler. Where should they start, and what does it look like to step into that first role? Maybe a mindset or habit.
Oh, I remember when I moved from Wall Street to my first ever startup role. I believe humans have breeds just like dogs. Humans aren't male, female, tall, short. No. Just like dogs, there is the enterprise sales breed. So I'm using corporate as a lens. There is a narcissist founder breed. There's a CTO breed. There's the legal breed. And what I mean by that is, for the first time scaler, if you're coming from a place that is, call it management consulting, or call it, I came from hedge funds. Generally, those places have less breeds. So as a hedge fund manager, it was an investor or admin or ops. There's like 3 different types of people at a hedge fund. So I was very used to walking around and dealing with an assistant, dealing with a fund accountant in the back, or an investor. That's it. And what you realize is they talk different languages. They don't talk English. They talk different languages.
Yeah.
Talking to a founder with a big ego, they talk a very different language than a senior engineer or an accountant. They're driven by different things. They understand different vocabulary of business. So an example would be, I was once talking to a CTO saying, hey, we need to build out this process for business so it streamlines XYZ. Our gross margins need to go up, right, to have better unit economics. And that favors a bigger business value. And he's like, what are you talking about? Now, if I spoke to another investor, financy person, they would have understood what I was talking about. What I then said, as I picked up the engineering language, says, hey, one of our number one costs is hosting and servers. It sits in our gross margin line. For every 10% you can reduce per GPU of cost, that's equivalent to 4 engineers you can hire.
Wow.
So I need you to get that down so we can hire more engineers and just be more efficient. They're like, got it. I understand. See? Different language.
Yes, very different.
For anyone coming into a startup for the first time, recognize how many languages you got to speak. It ends up being like 15. When you get very senior, I call it Google Translate. If I'm talking to a marketer, boom, I switch to my marketing language. Boom, I'm talking to engineer. Scalers have to talk to, just like Green Berets. They go into a country, they got to teach. They're speaking literally different languages. They're teaching how to fight, right? Special Forces teaches other forces. So corporate languages and breeds and identifying them early is very important.
Really, really good. Well, where can people learn more about you and the Operators Guild online?
Yeah, so we're readily discoverable now. So it's operators-guild, not underscore, but -guild.com. You can type in Operators Guild and it should come up. We also have an investing arm called FOG, which stands for Operators Guild. So we invest together. I'm on LinkedIn, Casey Wu, CASEYWOO. Any of those places will lead you to the right thing you're looking for. OG's our community. We also have a talent arm to help place and to help build your team. And so, the entire world of FOG, Guild Talent, and OG is serving the scaler. It's the early to mid-stage hyper growth, horizontal, multidisciplinary operator.
Fantastic. Make sure and link all of that in the show notes. Casey, it's been a great conversation. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again, Casey, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. You can learn more about Operators Guild and Casey at operators-guild.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our channel on YouTube. Lots of resources over there. And our channel is at Champion Leadership on YouTube. Thought leaders share. Share this episode with a designer who's fought heroically in the Make Your Logo Bigger wars. Everyone who shares this week gets a UX stress ball shaped like a wireframe. Squeeze once for empathy, twice to remind stakeholders that Comic Sans is never the answer. What happens when you combine diagnostics, AI, and a healthcare exec who's already built and exited twice? James Piacentino of Thrive Genetics joins us to share how he's scaling smarter healthcare through real-time lab data and operational precision. If you're in tech, life sciences, or just curious about the future of personalized medicine, this one is for you. Right? I just love that. Tech, healthcare, you put them all together and some amazing stuff they're doing over there. Absolutely unbelievable. Incredible episode. You got to check that out. And then after that, what if your startup could have a world class legal team, but only for what you actually need? Jeff Holman joins us to break down how his fractional legal model is helping founders protect IP, navigate risk, and scale smarter without blowing up the budget. This is another one. So useful. Well, I will see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.